I'm only taking one step at a time towards healing myself. I had to get out, I found a way out. No more living in pain or misery. It's all about protecting my energy. Keep the negative away from me, because I am just keeping my peace. Cut off everything that no longer was serving me, and I chose to start loving myself. I walk in my purpose, no looking back, I'm only going within. Be.O. standing there, a better version of me. I must say that I'm proud of me. It's not about how you feel, I'm living proof that God is real. So let me show you how to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, cause I came a long way. My journey isn't yet complete, that's what it look like to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, I'm proud of myself. It's nothing to it, you can do it, all you gotta do is just fight through it. Creative soul, creative soul, creative soul. Just fight through it. Creative soul, creative soul, creative soul, creative soul, yeah, yeah.
Welcome to Pain to Purpose podcast, where we have open discussions to heal together as a community. Today, we're on episode 36, and we're talking about women's empowerment. And our special guest is Miss Angela M. Welcome, Miss Angela.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know you are very busy being a motivational speaker and all the hats that you wear. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And it's such a pleasure and a blessing.
Good. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I can. So just as a person in the community, I am a single mother of three. I have 3 adult children, 28. My son is 28. I have a daughter who's 23 and a son, my youngest, who's getting ready to turn 19 on December the 19th. So I'm an empty nester. I work for a foster care agency here in West Texas, and I've been doing so for the past 3 years now. But I am not a stranger to child welfare because I've been in the field for 12 years. And through this journey, this career journey of mine, I was able to create my nonprofit called Empower Her Steps, which is utilizing your story, your life experiences as a platform to create the life that you so desire or dream of.
Okay, wonderful. So can you tell us the beginning of that story?
Absolutely. So my story is a roller coaster. It started when I was 7 years old,
Okay.
and I became familiar during this year of the type of family dynamic I was born into. I was very toxic. My mom and dad exposed us to domestic violence, and through that, my mom decided to separate and leave my dad. And not knowing anything until I was pulled out of school, that's when I became aware that there was some issues going on between my mother and father. And I started to grow an idea of what this was. And so at 7, she moved my sister and I with her to Killeen, Texas, to live with some family relatives of hers. And in that situation, my sister and I were exposed to severe sexual abuse. And I did outcry to my mother when that happened, and I became aware that this wasn't something that families should be doing with children. And my mom acted very appropriate. She removed us from the situation immediately. And we completely disconnected from that side of the family, but the scars were there. And in that phase of my life as a 7-year-old, I started to really question why I was here. Why am I here on earth? What's the purpose if I'm getting hurt? I'm getting left alone. Like there was just this spirit of depression, this spirit of maybe life would be better if I didn't exist.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I started to contemplate suicide. So kind of flashing forward, my mother and my father did reconcile. And in that reconciliation, I mean, there was still those situations of arguments and, just really verbal abuse, emotional abuse. And we were exposed to physical abuse through severe, harsh discipline. And it was just hard growing up in that home. I mean, if you were to look at us from the outside, you would think, oh, this is a perfect family. We presented well. All our basic needs were being met, but we just didn't talk about what was going on behind the doors.
And that
And
happens a lot in families.
yes,
They
yes.
have this, I always say from back in the day they would say, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And a lot of people don't realize that when it's domestic violence in the home, even though it's the adults, the children are watching it. So the children are going through it just as well as the adults. And
Mhm,
people don't understand how much trauma is thrown onto your children. Like, it's
mhm,
not like they're not seeing it or they're not hearing it. It doesn't matter if a small argument or words being thrown at each other, your kids are still hearing that or they're seeing it, and
mhm,
it does make a difference in their life. It changes a lot. Kids become they carry so much when they've lived in a home like that. And a lot of people look at the outside, and if you have the home, the nice home and the food and the kids are dressed up and clean, nobody looks beyond that,
mhm. That's
even if
absolutely,
you do speak up.
it's true. Yeah, you're right. And they don't really inquire. And I think just growing up in that generation, I think physical and just child abuse in general was starting to peak its head. Like people were starting to become aware that this was something that needed to be discussed. But we unfortunately grew up in that time where what happened at home stays at home, and we don't interfere. And so, just kind of growing up in that dynamic as I grew in age and adolescence, I suffered adolescent depression. I didn't know it was depression at that time. My mom and dad didn't know how to help me. It just came across as like, you're being lazy, you're sleeping too much, you just don't want to engage. But it was just hard because I was getting older and I didn't understand what life had to offer me outside of being 18, outside of my school career, because I was getting ready to graduate. When I was 18, I was ready to just quit school. And here I am. So I'm a compliant child because I don't want to suffer the discipline. So all through
Mhm.
my school career up until the age of 18 and being a senior in high school, I was very compliant. I did what I was told. I didn't fuss. I made the grades. You would have never seen this coming from me at this time. But at
Mhm.
18, I was just done. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand what I was experiencing emotionally. And my parents just didn't know how to advocate for me. So one time I got caught skipping school and I was in the principal's office and she asked me, she's like, "Where are you going when you're not in class?" And I said, "Well, I'm hanging out with my boyfriend." And she turned to me and she's like, "Well, you know what happens to girls that do that?" And I just look, my parents are sitting there with me in the office, like they don't say anything. And I'm like, well, you know what? Then that's fine. I'll just quit. Um, I didn't quit. One afternoon, I was laying in my bed at home, not in school, and I had a teacher that reached out to me, and she was so sweet. And it's not like I had a really good relationship with this teacher. She was an English teacher, but she reached out and she called me and she said, "You know what? You're so smart and you're almost done. Don't quit now." And honestly, that was probably the first time I've ever had anyone speak a positive anything to me. and it almost gave me a breath of life, just enough motivation to finish out school. But at the end of it, after completing all my classes, getting ready, graduation day the next day, I still was like, okay, now what? Now what does life have to offer me? What am I going to do with myself? I don't know. And I attempted my first suicide attempt before graduation. Through the grace of God, I was able to wake up the next morning, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm doing life. So I get up, get dressed, walk across the stage. But it was almost like a reboot for me, because I was able to look at it and say, you know what? Now I can create who I want to be. I'm no longer having to do school. I don't have to follow those rules. So I took a semester off before I started college, and just kind of worked on myself, went back, started exercising again, started to eat right, had a full-time job. And then I was ready to jump into school. And a semester after jumping into school, I was pre-med major at that time. I met this guy who I just fell head over heels with. And you know where the story's going. And I'm 19 years old, and I'm just smitten by this man. And I end up getting pregnant. So here I am, 19 years old and pregnant. And I have to tell my father, who is very strict and who always raised me to believe that if I was ever a teen mother, then I would be kicked out of the home, basically disowned, and thrown to the streets. And that was the expectation when I was going to speak with my father about my circumstance. Mm-hmm. And so I remember packing everything, like just getting ready. I was packing up everything. I had my ex there with me, and we were getting ready to talk to my dad about me being pregnant. And this is where I feel like life is so funny, because I literally see a pivoting moment. There was this like sliding doors moment, if just to kind of give you a visual. But I turned to my dad and I said, look, Dad, I'm pregnant. I'm going to get married, and I'm moving out of the house. And he turned to me with tears in his eyes, and he said, Angie, you don't have to do this. And it's almost like, it was like maybe a 5-second pause, but it seemed like forever, because that was something I didn't think I would ever hear from his mouth. Is like, you don't have to do this. But because I was stubborn at that time and being very rebellious, I dug my heels in and I said, no, I'm doing this. And so I got married. I had my son. Had to deal with a cold shoulder for 9 months from my father, but eventually, that surpassed. And then 4 years later, I'm 24 years old, and I'm experiencing my first divorce due to mistrust and just not being ready for a relationship, not understanding what marriage was, and not really having a good example laid out for me. Mm-hmm. I moved back to my family home, and my dad's diagnosed with leukemia. And he ends up a year later, after we find out that he has leukemia, passing away. So at this time, I'm 24 years old. My dad has passed away. I'm going through my divorce, and I'm just looking for something, just going through that grieving process, just looking for some answers. And my mom turns to me at that time, and she's like, okay, well, you need to move on with your life, and you need to figure it out. And I'm not going to be here to support you anymore. So she told me to find an apartment, find somebody to watch my son, who was 4 years old at that time. And I did. And at that moment, I just remember feeling so overwhelmed with sadness and feeling rejection and just feeling all this pain that I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I just shut down. Some of the coping that I turned to was drinking. I mean, that's, that's a normal thing that people try to reach out to. So I would drink, and I just shut down, and I was like, you know what? I'm not trying to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to care about anybody. I just want to be me. I want to be here for my son. And that's all I want to do. Ended up falling into another relationship. This ends up becoming my second marriage. End up getting pregnant. and it becomes violent, it becomes toxic, and I am exposed to severe abuse from this man, so much so that I miscarry. And in that moment, I end up finding myself in a cycle of you leave, you come back, you leave and you come back. And in those moments of coming back and reconciling, I get pregnant again with my daughter. And the abuse continues, and it continues. And then I get pregnant with my son. And then he decides that he's going to have an affair and kicks me and my 3 children out of his home. So here I am on the streets with my babies. I think my youngest at that time, who's not going to be 19 this month, was 3 at that time. And I'm okay with it because I'm like, it's the break that I needed. And I wasn't able to do it for myself. And it just pushed me out the door. So I had to get up on my feet. I'm like, okay, then we're going to go through this divorce. That's fine. But the cycle of domestic abuse and the cycle of being that battered woman, it's almost like a addiction in a manner of speaking.
But then you also came from a home, you saw it in a home, so it became a generational curse.
Yes.
But you were able to break that cycle at some point.
Yeah, it did. There was a moment where, the back and forth, and I just got so tired of it that it was my rock bottom. I fell to my knees crying, the ugly cry. So like tears running down my face and snot in my nose, and I'm gasping for air. And I'm just like, Lord, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I need you to intervene. I need you to step in, and I need to know why these things happen. I need to know why a good person would go through suffering. What is all of this that's going on? And it wasn't until later that week when I went to church and I heard this message, and the scripture, my life verse, is Jeremiah 29:11 is what I heard, future and hope. That's what God has for you. But when we make choices, we also have to suffer through those consequences. And it's not the suffering that God wants for us. I mean, we as humans make those choices for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we have to be responsible for those consequences. And it just clicked. It just made sense that this isn't the life that God planned for me, because he definitely has a future for me. He definitely has hope for me. Mm-hmm. But I need to stop making the choices that put me in these circumstances that cause the grief, that cause the hurt, that cause the pain. And so at that moment, that's when I decided, okay, I'm 32 years old. We're not going to do this anymore. I'm going to get back into school. And thank God for internet. Thank God for online classes, because I was able to do so. I got back into school, received my bachelor's in psychology, continued, and received my master's in human services. Now, my determination, goals, and motivation to continue to grow for myself so that my children could benefit from it didn't keep my ex away. He was always there, constantly trying to like lure me back. That I ended up finding myself in marriage number 3 out of convenience, for safety, someone that could be a barrier between me and my ex. And you mentioned generational curses. So as I'm completing my master's degree, I'm stepping into the child welfare field, and I'm starting to build my career. I find out that my daughter was raped by a half brother on her dad's side of the family. She was 11 years old when this happened. And that's when it hits me that I not only picked up where my mom left off, but now my daughter is picking up where I left off. And I had to do something different for them. I had to do something different for my children and my daughter. This is not the legacy that I wanted to leave behind for her. This is not what I wanted for her. And it was hard because that sent her in a spiral of being out of control and questioning her identity and questioning who she was. And when she became 16 years old, now she's going through a domestic violent relationship in high school. And as much as I was there for her, as much as I would put her in counseling, and we did it all, individual counseling, family counseling. I mean, it was her and I was doing the things that you're supposed to do when you're advocating for your daughter and for her safety. And the rebellion was just there. Like, it was like I'd pull her out of the fire just for her to walk right back into it. And it was so hard to watch until it got so bad that I had to just let her go. And I did. I let her go. And in that moment, the Lord was just kind of working with me. And I remember hearing a message where he said, you're no longer the parent that tells your daughter, you can do this and you can do that. Like, yes, you have permission for this. No, you don't have permission for that. You're now a support system for your daughter. And when I heard that, it made sense to me, because I no longer had that influence as a parent to parent her in the rights and wrongs. She knew the rights and wrongs. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't hold punishment over her. Like, I just needed her to understand that I was there to support her.
Right.
And when I received that message, I reached back out to her and I said, look, school's important. You need to complete school. If that means that I have to bring you into my home with this boy and all, then let's do that so you can graduate. And I did. I brought her in and the boy in, and it just through working with her, mentoring her, make sure you get a job, make sure you're going to class and being there for her and supporting her through that relationship started to pull apart. And I remember having a discussion one point where I'm like, okay, look, you guys cannot be violent in my home. Like, if you're going to be violent in my home, you're going to have to leave. And if that's the case, then I'm going to give you 30 days to do so. And then this boy just started yelling and causing a ruckus. And so I said, well, then you can leave now. And I turned to my daughter and I said, and you, Mila, if you want to leave, then you can go. And I tell you, God works in mysterious ways, because that boy turned to my daughter and said, no, if you're going to be on your mother's side, I don't want you anymore. And that really was what she needed to hear. She needed to hear him say no to her. Otherwise, she was in that cycle, and I knew it. And that was the saving grace there. And they broke apart, and I was able to work with her. I was able to she was able to do some healing and stuff like that. And now she's in a healthy marriage, and she's got 2 beautiful babies. She's blessed me to be a grandmother, and she's the best mother. I mean, she's better than I was as a mother, and I tell her that all the time, because that's what we want for our kids, to be better than we were.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so getting her settled, and I'm doing some of my own healing work too, that I'm in the community, and I have this young mom come up to my office. She's got 2 babies, and she's got CPS, and she's like, I don't know why the worker wants me to do women's empowerment, because I'm not getting beat up. I don't have those kind of relationships. And it just hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, young lady, like, women's empowerment isn't about just toxic relationships. It's about being able to stand on your own 2 feet, understand who you are, understand what you want out of life, how
believing in you,
create it exactly, and not be dependent on others to fill in those voids. And it's about it's being empowered in your career, being empowered in your relationships, being empowered in your finances, being empowered in your own self-care. And so that's when I created Empower Her Steps. And that's when I started to share my own story of, through motivational speaking and encouragement and doing the workshops that I do and stuff like that. And I just actually, this young lady, she reached out to me not too long ago, and she was talking. We were doing like a Brene Brown book, and we were kind of working together. And she's
Mhm.
like, "Hey, I'm just reaching out to you. I've been working on myself. I've been reading this book that you gave me, and I did the assessment again, and I'm getting better, and I'm improving, and I just want you to know that I got my GED." And I have a house now and a car, and my babies are doing good, but she still struggles with when people talk negative to her, because she goes into that panic. Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my kids again. And being a product of the system herself, with do right, I understand. And it was just a moment of, hey, you know what, I want to let you know that you inspired me to do something in my life, and I'm glad to see that you are doing things to better your life for your children too. And you can continue to do that. You are doing, it's about not being perfect, but being better than you were yesterday. And you're doing that. So keep going. And it was such a beautiful conversation that we had. And it just made it feel like I'm in the right place and I'm doing the right things.
Yes. From pain to purpose. It's
Mm.
so amazing to hear your story. Um, I love to hear when people are reaching out to the community to grab others and wheel them in, because there's a lot of people that they don't have that support. And you may think they do, but they really don't. And sometimes people just need to hear, like, girl, it's going to be okay. I got you. Whether you pray with them, whether you talk them through it, picking up the phone, just checking on them, encouraging them, using those affirmations, like, it really does a lot. And some people don't realize that. So you're doing a lot in the community. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. And it all comes from not having what I needed. So it's all about being the person I needed when I was younger and going through those things. I didn't
Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't realize, you talk about community. I didn't realize how important community was when you're trying to change your life and trying to change your goals. And until I created until I created this nonprofit of mine. But it is vital. It is vital to the human spirit. It's just vital to life.
Right. So how can they reach out to you for your workshops?
Sure. So I am on all the social media platforms. So Facebook, Insta, TikTok, up until it's not there anymore. I don't know what's going to happen. YouTube, but I have my own website, angelinamojica.com. I mean, really, you can just kind of Google me. I'm anywhere and everywhere. I don't hide. And yeah, and then also too, you can email me, angelinamojica.cfle@gmail.com. And I'm willing to work with anybody. Yes, I do coaching and just whatever the need is, I will create it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there any gems you would like to leave with our audience?
Sure. So, coming in 2025, June, I'm going to be doing a virtual conference, a women's conference, for Empower Her Steps. And so I just, like and subscribe, share. It'll be released June I believe it's the 21st of 2025.
Okay, absolutely. Let us know, remind us so that we can post it on our social media sites as well and get it out
Sure.
there. And for our audience, I pray that something was said that will help you through your life. And if you need a motivational speaker or a coach, please reach out to her. You will not be disappointed. And remember, it's only pain until you start your purpose and start your healing journey. I'll see you next Monday. Bye.